Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Starsector. Today, we are going to be discussing the basics of Fleet Command, and including a sample combat. The very basics of Fleet Command. Let's get in to the simulator real fast and just deploy the fleet, and some kind of training fleet. When you're in combat, you can hit Tab, and that will bring up this command screen. It shows you the tactical overlay, the full picture of the battle, information, of course, limited by fog of war and your ship's vision range. Now, if we click on a ship, such as this Onslaught, we get a little view of its stats. We can highlight over it here in the bottom left to see its full card with all of its guns and various statistics. But we also now have access to all of these buttons over here. So, this was specifically requested by someone, so I'm going to go through all of this one by one and tell you what it does. Then I'm going to show you kind of how to use it. First button, going from left to right, transfer command. You can move your captain into any ship that you control. It'll take some time for the shuttle to fly over, but then you'll get to pilot whatever ship you've selected. Nothing wrong with moving around between ships during battle. You've probably seen me do this in a number of fights on the channel. When my ship is too injured to continue, I'll just grab one of my allies' ships and use that. F, show video feed. So, if we click on a ship and then hit F, we will lock the camera to them, and the camera will track as they move. See here, we're following. And I didn't know this, but apparently you can press and hold Q for a video feed that lasts as long as the key is held down. So let's try that. Let's hold Q, holding Q, and then when we release, we're back in the tactical menu. That's really handy. I'm going to need to try and remember to do that in the future. So, next button, the F2 button. I use this a lot. So I see an enemy ship like this Fury, and it's like, well, what does it do? We can, of course, mouse over it in the bottom left to see the stat card, but I am more fond of just hitting F2 to bring up the whole thing within the codex. So inside this menu, you get kind of the same information, but you can also click, like, what does an ion beam do? You can click on the ion beam, it'll give you all of the details. So F2 is really handy if you're unfamiliar with enemy ships. Just click on them, hit F2, or you can just click on the buttons down below and you'll know what to do. So, search and destroy. This causes a ship to ignore other orders and tasks. So if you, say, had a waypoint on the map with a capture objective, ships would automatically be assigned to go after it, unless they were on search and destroy or had been given other orders. I will often assign the search and destroy order to phase ships and safety overridden ships where their peak performance time is more limited and they function better in a more aggressive role. But generally, I don't use this button too much. Retreat. So, if we click on this ship here and then click retreat, he will retreat from battle while trying to defend himself. So he'll fight back, he'll try and fight through or around anything in the way. Now, similarly to that, we have the direct retreat order. So, retreat from battle at best speed. So with that, they will prioritize going fast rather than going intelligently. I almost never use the direct retreat order because of this. It's a good way to lose a ship if there ends up being an enemy between its retreat path, but it may have its uses. So, other orders, this top row here. Light, medium, and heavy escort orders. All of these assign ships automatically to protect another ship. So let's take this Onslaught, give it a heavy escort order. Now, when we watch it, you'll note this drover is coming in, kind of behind it, sort of orbiting it. We can see here in the TAC menu, those ships kind of are now pointed at it, locked to it. If they get too far away, you'll see them gain a little, so there, the drover has that directional arrow pointing him toward his escort target. So when ships are locked in with escort orders, they will stay a set distance away, or try to, even if under overwhelming fire. So be careful who gets assigned as an escort. Like in this fleet, the Centurions are the perfect kind of escort. So if we hit the N key or the cancel assignment key on this Onslaught, removes the escort order. Now, a better way to do escort orders is to click on the ship that you want to be doing the escorting, and then right-click on the escort target. So now, this particular Centurion will try to escort this particular Onslaught. That way we don't end up with like our carriers trying to play defense. We don't want our carriers doing that necessarily. So, all three of these kind of work the same. If you're not sure what ships you want to have escort something, you can just use these orders based on kind of how many ships you want to have protecting them. If you're not sure what to do, click medium. You'll figure out kind of how your fleet works in time. So lastly, distinct from the escort order, is the defend order. So defend can be placed on a ship. We take our onslaught, we give it a defend order, and look at all those arrows. So when you give a ship a defend order, or a single point a defend order, every ship that doesn't have any other orders is going to try and defend that spot. So if we were to say, go over here to the Centurion and give it a defend order, now our fleet has been split into two things, or two groups, or they'll try to, going to each point. And you can also double click like so, and give a defend order to a particular point in space. And with defend orders, ships tend to roam quite far from them, where escort would lock things in place. So be kind of careful with that. Your ships may end up thousands of units away from the defend point, just because there are enemies that are on a vector toward their chosen bit of ground. So that covers what we can get for orders by clicking on ships. What about clicking on a point in space? We double click on the map, and we have a few things here. So first up is the avoid order. So avoid makes your ships stay about 800 to 1,000 units away from this thing, this particular waypoint. What I'll often do with avoid orders is to kind of keep my ships boxed in and together so they can help each other, is to put out like a line of avoid orders, like so. And then maybe even like down the sides, to keep my guys just kind of holding the middle without giving them any other orders. So I'm actually going to leave those orders up during this mock battle. Put my own ship on autopilot. For now, it's fine. So we also, when double-clicking in space, we have the defend order, which we've already covered. Then there's the rally task force order, which I tend to just call the waypoint order, because it forms a waypoint with a name, so waypoint Omega. We click over here and we make another one, it's waypoint Alpha. And the name doesn't really matter, just to distinguish between them. So now we have 3 waypoints. And if you assign a ship to a waypoint, it will try and stay kind of near it, and they will tend to stay closer to waypoints than a ship would to a defend order. So waypoints are generally how I would form up a formation with my ships. So if you click on a ship and then just right-click, it'll auto-assign, create a waypoint under your cursor and assign the ship to it. If I were going to turn this fleet into some semblance of structure with waypoints, I would do something like this. In my own ship, I'll just pull back because it's not really suited to this kind of defensive formation that we're making. But mainly, you put your big chonky ships like your onslaughts in the middle, your cruisers kind of fill in the gaps between, then you want your various frigates to play around, and then your carriers, like these drovers, to be in the back. That's kind of Ducky's general formation philosophy. And now you see all of our ships are pulling backward, kind of trying to head toward their waypoints. If a ship doesn't have any enemies close enough to its waypoint, it will just sit, like this monitor is doing, exactly on top of its waypoint. So waypoints are probably my most used order, and if you're only going to take away one thing here, use your waypoints. Use your waypoints to kind of keep your ships together, because an isolated ship, like this Omen, super far away from his fleet, he is basically asking to die. We can just go in with our ship and absolutely destroy him, even if I pilot super poorly. So, keep your ships together, don't let them get exposed, and we'll just tie him back to a waypoint. So now we have what you might call a battle line formed. Your enemies have formed a line, we've formed a line. What other orders do we have to discuss? Right. So, there's waypoint, and then there's a rally civilian craft down here. I don't use this one too much. With rally civilian craft, so we go make one of those points, and we park the onslaught on it. With rally civilian craft, a ship will try and go directly on top of it and just sit there. They will not move very much based on the battle state. It is the best order you can use to lock a ship in place, which for an onslaught is not a bad choice, because onslaughts can take a lot of punishment and dish out a lot of frontal damage. But generally, I don't advise using the Rally Civilian Craft order unless you're sure of what you're doing. The other thing is that the order is originally designed for all of your freighters and tankers and transports together at that location, so if for some reason you've got your freighters in combat and they can't safely retreat, you might try and corral them to one side. I would deploy one of my freighters so we could see it in action, but I actually don't have the points for that. Let me just retreat my own ship real fast. Okay, with my Aurora retreated, we can deploy a fuel tanker and stuff, and just kind of, so when they are deployed, you see here they've divided to go to either that Rally Civilian Craft point, the Onslaught is set to, or to this one. When we get rid of that waypoint, now they're all going to go rally at that point, and just kind of do their best to stay out of the way, hopefully. If you play with mods that expand the size of the battle map, the Rally Civilian Craft Order may also have applications there, but yeah, I don't normally use my civilian ships in combat. So, last segment here. When you click on an enemy ship, there are some interesting orders. Let me just retreat my civilian ships. Okay, first up, set as target. Target selected enemy ship. So what this does is actually sets your ship to target that ship, and I'll demonstrate. So let's get in the Centurion. So when we are not in tactical mode, if we click on a ship and hit R, now we have stats on it, and we can see its health and its guns. If I hit R again and don't have the cursor over that ship, deselects them. Put the cursor back on them, select them, there we go. So R is just how you would, and you want to do this to target like any missiles you might have. So we have like our salamander tube. We're not targeting him. Who knows where our salamander will go? It kind of dumbfires for a minute and then it tracks onto something. But if we have him locked on, gotta wait for salamander reload, which takes forever. Okay, we may just die. We'll see. Okay, so now he's locked on, and if we fire the salamander even over to the right here, it immediately will track onto him and try and go and hit him. Perfect, got his engine. So, what else do we have? We have, of course, the Codex button, F2, which we've already covered. The Ignore order. So, if you ignore a ship, your fleet will not pursue it or react to its movements. This is particularly useful on enemy monitors, which there's only one on the field right now, but if we ignore him as a monitor, he doesn't have a lot of offensive capability. He's really just there to distract and soak damage. So if we ignore him, our ships won't prioritize throwing any missiles or anything at him, which can be pretty handy. We could also put the Avoid order on him. Watch this. So now all of our ships, despite their waypoints, are giving him space to exist. So maybe we're saving him for later. Maybe he's a very powerful foe. We would put an Avoid order on him, kill some of his friends first, and then try and gang up on him. Okay, and then next order is Fighter Strike, a little triangle icon. So orders your fighters to attack this ship. So if we put Fighter Strike on him, generally your ships will prioritize sending fighters, although you may need to click on a carrier and assign him to the task of doing the Fighter Strike to get particular fighters from a particular carrier to attack the target. If you're not already using waypoints, I believe Fighter Strike will just call whatever carrier is nearby to try and issue the strike. But my fleet doesn't have very fanciful carriers, so Fighter Strike I generally don't use. Now, Eliminate order. So the Eliminate order, when placed on an enemy ship, will cause your ships to try and overextend to kill or pursue that target. And you can either, just like with some of the other orders, you can either just put the order on a ship and ships will automatically be assigned to chase them, or you can put the order, say, on a ship like this, and then click your ship and assign them to that Eliminate order to make sure, say, that this onslaught pursues that drover. And lastly, the Engage order, which is probably my most used order when clicking on enemy ships. So if you just do the Engage order, click on the ship, and then click E for Engage, or click the button down here, your ships will be assigned to pursue that target, but they'll do so intelligently and try not to overextend themselves. This is all, of course, modified by kind of what guns you have in terms of range and your captain personality on a ship, if any. Like Reckless will, of course, be more aggressive, and Steady will be a bit more predictable. I generally don't use Cautious or Timid officers, but anyway, that's all of the buttons and what they all do for Fleet Command, and kind of the idea of keeping your ships together, forming a battle line, all of that. There's a few things we can't cover in Simulator, though, so we need to go get into a live engagement. So there should be a little basic bounty in this system, if my intel is correct. Ah yes, there they are. So before every fight, I'm not an Iron Man, so I'll save. Just a good policy to have. And we are going to engage this little fleet. So, we're going to be fighting an independent fleet that's turned pirate. They have an array of high-tech, low-tech, and midline ships in their fleet. Because we're pretty stacked, we have a lot of S-mods. This shouldn't be a challenge, but that makes it perfect to kind of talk over and explain process. So, let's just deploy everyone. We have enough points to do so. So this is the part that I couldn't cover in the simulator, which is these various objectives on the field. Now, with these, they provide specific effects which are listed in the bottom left. A nav buoy gives plus 5% to top speed, 20% base total maximum. I actually don't know what that line exactly means. If you know, let me know. But mainly it grants top speed and bonus deployment points. up to a maximum of 240. So if we were the outnumbered party, we would need to capture objectives, maybe to deploy our whole fleet. But because I have very skilled officers, I have a very large fleet, we already have 240, so we don't need to capture objectives for that reason. So, nav buoys boost speed, sensor jammers boost ECM, which basically extends your weapon range. Comm relays get you more command points. Now, in the simulator, we had infinite command points, but here, note that when I give an order, in the upper right, there's now this little bar that says command frequency open. As the timer proceeds, that bar ticks downward. But while the frequency is open, I can give as many orders as I want to my fleet, and they will attempt to perform them. I'm just going to show you my very standard operating procedure for how I do these kind of basic fights against regular enemies. Not endgame enemies, that's a little more specific. But if you're just bounty hunting, this will serve just fine. I'm going to do kind of the whole thing very cautiously, so that you can have kind of a standard to work with. So avoid orders along the back line to prevent your ships from chasing too far. Capture orders on all the points. If you have any ships that are anchor ships or line ships, anything that can take a beating and dish out damage frontally, form them in a line in the middle. So the onslaughts, definitely. The champion, definitely. If you have anything that's a dedicated tanking ship, like the monitor would be a good one to put in. I'm also going to put a Centurion on this side just to keep it equal. And if you have any backline ships, like the Griffin is very good at hurling missiles, but not very good at fighting duels. So it's a backline support ship. Those go in the back, as do our drovers, which are dedicated carriers. So you'll note I've not given orders to every ship. I have a few ships, the Centurions mainly, that are not going to go out to battle. And the Anubis. The Anubis is actually going to be best if we have it escort one of the onslaughts, so we'll just lock him there. And then there's my ship, which I did not do weapon groups for because I am a fool. Okay, that fixes weapon groups. So, the main strength of this kind of formation is that this will play itself while I pilot my ship, which is kind of my specialty, is personally piloting things. But if you're not a personal piloting kind of guy, you could save the deployment points of, say, this Aurora and get more ships to play with on the field. So the Centurions that we didn't give orders to are going to be busy trying to capture these side points, which will keep the enemy filtering left and right and kind of contesting. If I notice that my Centurions have captured these and are moving there to the topmost point, it means we now have them outnumbered and we could maybe ditch the waypoints and go on the offensive. But let's play on for a little bit and see how we do. Because I am a personal piloting kind of guy, getting my ship into the field and doing tons of damage is kind of how I'm going to win fights where I would otherwise be on equal footing. So let's just drift in here, kind of look for targets, and soak up damage and keep them distracted as well. So the longer the battle goes on, the more my Griffins and stuff are going to chip away at these guys, because they don't have a very coherent fleet doctrine. Okay, so this brawler is kind of away from his friends. Let's stick to him. Hit him with the blasters. There we go. Do some good damage on him. And I don't really even need to eliminate ships. I just need to keep up pressure on them. Can't deal with any fighters that come my way. Oh no, I was overloaded by fighters. I was too busy narrating. That's okay. Because our fleet... you know what? Let's actually just retreat my ship. Let's just watch. So our fleet here has formed a little bit of a battle line. The onslaughts push forward and fire, the Griffins dance slowly back and forth and throw their harpoons, the Anubis dips in with temporal shell to do very good amounts of pressure. On the defense, so the Anubis just shot the Paladin with that missile there. That's kind of what he does on defense, is just fly swatter missiles and fighters out of the air. Champion not really doing too much, but that's okay. The onslaughts themselves will kind of carry this as the main damage dealers, and we can see the drovers are still maneuvering and moving their fighters around from the backline, so they're doing good enough. The monitor is doing its job, absorbing damage and surviving. He's really just there to distract. We've captured a point on the right. Centurion not doing any damage to that Enforcer, but drawing out the clock. That Enforcer is safety overridden. He's going to last 158 seconds. Our Centurion is going to last 360, so if he just stalls, he'll be fine. Okay, back to the onslaughts, though. Now, they have not managed to form a coherent line to match ours. They're kind of bubbling up in the middle. So you don't have to do anything at this stage. If your fleet is low-tech and has high peak performance time, you can just wait it out. But because we're being fancy here, we're actually going to push. So by moving forward our entire line, and this is a skill you're going to need later in the game, so might as well demonstrate. But we're just going to take everything that was glued to a waypoint, shove it all forward by about 1,000 units, and I'm going to hit tab, and then tab again really fast. All the old waypoints that didn't have units assigned to them have disappeared. So if I had accidentally, say, left this monitor behind and I tabbed, I'd be like, oh, why is this waypoint back here? And then I would move it forward. But it's important that I'm doing all this while paused so that I don't burn command frequency and lose those points. So the points don't come back very quickly. I want to have them for later. So now, immediately, 2 ships disabled as our onslaught goes forward, and that Falcon is even more exposed and without allies. Yeah, and there go the Trident bombers from the Drover. Excellent. And there we go. There's a sandwich on the Falcon. We have the Centurion, the Monitor, and of course the Onslaught, all firing from different angles. And he's flamed out. He's gone. Okay, nice. So at this point, the enemy is in total rout. So we're going to just hit full assault and say yes, which, as you can see, all of our orders have disappeared. And now our ships are just going to run them down. And there's the message. The enemy fleet is defeated. Press escape to end the battle at any time. So that's kind of how I play through a battle. This should work for most fleet comps as long as your fleet is not safety overridden and has some guns that are range 700 and higher as their like primary. But if you're short ranged or if you're built for speed, that's going to be a whole other thing to discuss, like if we were going to fly a Pather fleet. But especially for just a straight up like themed low-tech, midline, or high-tech fleet, this will work. But yeah, that is the basic guide for fleet command. That's what all the buttons do. That's how I set up a fleet for an average battle. That's how I play offense and how I play defense. If I were really pushed back on the defense and like lost a few ships, I would just take this whole formation and I would back up. I would back up to the lower objective, wherever it may be, form a line of avoid orders that's a bit further along, like to the south, so that I stay on my half of the chessboard, and I would only focus, if I were on pure defense, I would only focus on the 3 back waypoints and ignore the northern one. Okay, and I guess we could talk about this at the end. So normally, when a fleet is defeated and they're running, I just let them go, but pursuit is a particular kind of battle that you might need to know how to do. But if you pursue, often you'll get the auto-resolve option, order your second in command to handle it. That's what I take, generally, but you can manually command these. So when in pursuit of an enemy, you want to mainly deploy your fast ships. So the Griffins and the Champion, not so useful here, so they're not super fast, but the Onslaughts actually have burn drive. They might catch something. But the other thing here is with pursuit engagements, you can click again, and you'll see it says deploy. Deploy left, deploy right. So we're actually going to use that to deploy our Centurions from the sides. You'll see how that looks. So deploy. So our Centurions come in on the side there, and we want that nav buoy so that we have top speed and we deny them top speed. And then we're just going to look at like what their slowest moving ships might be, like the Champion and the Sunder, and we're going to eliminate them. Often in these pursuit engagements, you'll see purely civilian ships like Buffaloes and Promethei, things that carry just cargo and fuel. Attack those first. Those are going to give you more loot, as far as I'm aware. And we are immediately flamed out by a single salamander. Good job, Omen. I'll get you for this. Okay. But a clever manually controlled pursuit can spend less resources than auto-resolve. But generally, I honestly don't worry about it too much unless it's super early in the game, and those like marginal benefits will be outsized in value due to resource constraints. But in the late game here, it doesn't really matter which one. Do whichever one is more fun. And honestly, they didn't have much. That's basically it. And the Onslaughts only really participated in cracking the Champion, but that's okay. Just let our fleet mop up, put myself on autopilot, and hit full assault. Put eliminate orders. During full assault, the only order you can give is the eliminate order. If I swap to an engage order, it turns off full assault and I have to turn it back on. Just a little side thing to bear in mind. So when in full assault, just pick a few targets to eliminate and just kind of work through the enemy fleet. Don't give any other orders or it'll turn off full assault and your ships will act more cautiously again. Get him, boys. Oop, he's a wolf, he's slippery. So the enemy fleet is defeated, they have surrendered once again. And I don't think we're going to catch that wolf, so we'll just claim victory and call it here. Alright, I don't really want any of their ships. This was basically just a fight, purely for demonstration. Alright, but there is a successful little victory, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. So, we're going to call it here. If you have any questions, comments, ideas, things you might think would be good for future videos, please let me know down in the comments. And also to everyone supporting on Patreon and through YouTube memberships, thank you so much for your support. This channel would not be up and running without your continual help. So I am eternally grateful, and all of your names should be on this little card here at the end. If you would like to support the channel, you can do so through Patreon or through YouTube memberships for as low as $1. I will see you all in the next one. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and I will catch you next time.